Hi, this video looks at franchising as a method of growth, and it's just here, methods of growth that you need to know about. So first thing to say about franchising that can be a little bit confusing is that franchising is actually a method of organic growth, okay, a method of internal growth, where it's easier to explain by looking at what external growth is. So external growth is where a business increases in size via takeovers and mergers, so actually taking over another business. Franchising is considered organic or internal growth because you're not taking over another business, but what's happening when you offer a franchise is that other people are coming to you and they're saying, look, I really want to run a branch of your business, and I'm going to put my own money into that, and I'm going to open up a branch of your business. So it's considered to be internal organic growth, because you're not having to pay loads of money to buy another company and integrate another company. Somebody else is simply using your brand name, and they've paid you in order to do that. So you're not having to finance the expansion yourself. So with that in mind, really important to understand that a franchise is considered to be organic, internal growth. Let's just define it. So a franchise is when a business licenses another individual or organisation to trade using the franchise's name, branding and product range. So it's a very common way for businesses to expand by franchising out their name, letting other people use that business's brand, its existing product range, negotiating, doing all the marketing centrally, and then letting the individual franchisee do things like taking staffing decisions, maybe giving them some freedom to decide to a certain extent the product range in their area, but generally many decisions are made centrally and the franchisee runs the actual operation, the day-to-day business. And so there's lots of different industries in which you can do franchising, even things like engineering and so on, but here are just some examples of different companies that you may recognise that offer franchise opportunities. So when we're thinking about franchising as a method of growth, it's worth just reminding ourselves what the advantages might be to the franchisor and the franchisee. So I'll do that, but look at the franchisee in the next slide. The franchisor or the franchisor is a business that licenses other individuals or organisations to trade under their brand name. So in other words, the franchisor is the business, the central office, the business that have designed the brand, designed the business model. They undertake all the decisions centrally, or lots of main decisions centrally, and then they pass those decisions out to the different franchisees in order to implement. So what are the advantages to the franchisor of running their business in this way? Well, first of all, it allows for rapid expansion as the franchisees are providing their own startup capital. So rather than me thinking, right, I want to open a branch in London, in Exeter, in Southampton, in Newcastle, the people are coming to them and saying, look, I've got some money, I want to buy the license off you to start my own business, and therefore the franchisor doesn't need to have lots and lots of money available, lots and lots of retained profits, or doesn't need to borrow money in order to expand. Therefore, this is a less risky form of expansion than perhaps maybe expansion caused by borrowing, where you end up with a highly geared business because you've had to borrow a lot of money. The franchisees themselves have put in a load of money to this, so that creates an incentive for themselves. If they've had to put in, £50,000 of their own savings or whatever in order to buy the license, then they're going to be highly motivated to make this work. They're bearing the risk of the startup. And it allows the franchisor to quickly exploit economies of scale, such as purchasing economies, technological economies, if they're buying lots of expensive machinery for the new franchisees. On the other hand, there are some disadvantages as well. So there's a risk of damage to the brand as the franchisees control their own branches. Okay, so we license these people to run our business, but are they actually any good? Or, new business owners make mistakes all the time. It's perfectly natural to make mistakes, but is this going to have an impact on our brand? And if I see, say, for example, one McDonald's and I get a very poor burger at that McDonald's because it's a new franchisee or whatever, they're not very experienced. Okay, is that going to affect my perception of all McDonald's? Well, there's a danger that it could. Rapid expansion can also be difficult for the franchisor to monitor and manage. So it's going to be really important that the franchisor is able to keep an eye on its franchisees, monitor how they're doing, to step in and support if that's necessary. But if the chain is expanding very rapidly, it's going to be very costly to do this, and can be difficult. And of course, the franchisee doesn't just start up the brand for free. They want a share of the profit. So that is a cost to the franchisor. They don't own as much profit as they would do if they went ahead and opened all their own branches themselves. Okay, so what about the advantages to the franchisee? Well, first of all, the franchisee is the individual organisation who's licensed to trade under a brand name, and they do that in exchange for a fee. So usually an annual fee they pay to run the franchise, plus a share of the profits. So what are the advantages to the franchisee? Well, it tends to be a lower risk of starting a new business under a recognised brand name and an existing business model. So rather than having to come up with your own brand and market that and come up with your own business model, okay, we're just simply using a business model that's already worked elsewhere under a recognised brand, often with national marketing that's going to be recognised by people in the area. So it's a much lower risk than actually going ahead and starting your own business. Okay, so I could start Mr. Evans Burgers or whatever. But actually, a lot more people are going to recognise that McDonald's symbol and be more likely to come in and buy a McDonald's. So that ties into the second point. Consumers are already going to be aware of the brand. The franchisor is also going to provide assistance and training. So, if I am starting up my own business, then and I'm not using a franchise, then I'm going to have to solve all my own problems. I may not have much experience. I may not have many contacts in the industry. Whereas if I'm running it under a franchise, I can simply contact the franchisor and say, look, I'm having some difficulties in this area. Can you provide me some training, or can you give me some advice? And they'll be able to do that. And many of the difficult tasks can be undertaken centrally, such as marketing and negotiating with suppliers. Going to have much more power over suppliers if you're part of a franchise than you would do if it was an independent business. And expensive things like new product development is going to be undertaken centrally. However, one of the major reasons for starting your own business might be in order to have some independence and be able to make your own decisions. And a lot of the decision making in a franchise is undertaken by the franchisor. Things like, the product range, where raw materials come from, the branding and the marketing, and how you're selling that product, and the pricing of each product, and the uniforms that staff wear, and the internal design of the business. All of these things are out of your control, which may be a serious, which may be a major reason why you wouldn't want to actually open a franchise. You're going to need to share your profits with the franchisor as well, and you might be running your restaurant or your branch of the franchisor really, really well, but what happens if down the road somebody else opens a franchise and they're rubbish, and people in the area get the impression that every single one of these businesses is no good, right? You're running a separate business to them, but you could be affected by the actions of other franchisees who are less skilled at running the business than you. So, main thing to remember, franchising is a form of organic internal growth that has advantages and disadvantages as well.